All right, folks. So, welcome to my AEW All Out 2023 review on what is, without question, the most historic week in AEW history, for better or for worse. This review is coming to you late because I overslept today. I fell asleep, took a nap, and woke up. It was 11 o'clock or almost 11. So, I missed like a lot of this show. So, I actually went back, like when I'm recording this, I went back and started from the beginning because I promised y'all I was going to do a review, but I'm just being very transparent. Like I missed some of this show, so I'm watching it as like I went back to the beginning to watch it from beginning to end. That's why this review is going up so late. But before we do, I want to say one comment about the All In, All Out thing. There's more to talk about with the CM Punk thing because Punk was supposed to headline this show, and I mean you know what happened by now. But the All In, All Out week pay-per-views being a week apart. Tony Khan wants to do that again next year, and I think that's a grave mistake. Not only was All In poorly booked and All Out, like the booking going into the show was not good except for a couple of matches. And that I talked about that in my All In review. Like it was just the guy isn't that good of a booker, number one, and number two, these shows in particular needed to be booked super well, and this show was not. It just wasn't. Like All Out felt like All In's table scraps. You know what I mean? It felt like a longer episode of Dynamite. That's literally what it kind of was. And All Out every year has been one of their big shows. I mean, you could argue what's AEW's like WrestleMania type show prior to All In, right? And the argument was always Double or Nothing or All Out because a bunch of stuff happens at All Out. You know, they have debuts and things like that. Big moments happen at All Out, but this year's show, because of the whole 1 week apart thing, it just doesn't work. You know, WWE's tried to do this before, TNA's tried to do it. It does not work. And it's not just because Tony Khan can't book, but wrestling fans out there asking for like over $80 within like a week, 7-day period from fans. That's just not a good idea, man. So they have to move All Out to either later on in September, and they're not going to do it because they like that Labor Day weekend thing, but they should move it to later in September or move All In back to earlier August. That probably makes more sense to do it that way. I just think that it's just a bad idea, dude. It's a bad idea. And everybody who studied the business is going to tell you that. And I think the numbers coming out of this show will tell you that too. It's not just because of the whole CM Punk thing. Like, this show had very little hype. They took MJF and Adam Cole and stuck them in a match with two job guys. And I'm sorry, I have nothing against Alex Reynolds and Joe Silva, or Joe Silver, whatever. I barely even remember these guys' names, but these guys are pretty much enhancement talent. You know what I mean? But once again, folks, the AEW superstars, the AEW wrestlers have to come in and save the show because no matter what, for better or for worse, you can criticize Tony Khan's booking, and I have, but the wrestlers and the in-ring talent roster saves the show again, and they all worked hard. And that, to me, should be commended, that in spite of the horrible booking and the bad ideas going into the show, they worked hard, and I respect them for that. AEW has a tremendous roster. So, yeah, that's actually the opening matchup. Dark Order's Alex Reynolds and John Silver against MJF and Adam Cole for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. I get it that MJF and Adam Cole are the two biggest stars in AEW right now as far as viewership goes and everything. But once again, the Dark Order has really been enhancement talent since the passing of Brody Lee. That's just a factual statement. It's unfortunate, but everybody knew who was going to win this. However, they still went out there and they tried to entertain, and I commend them for that. It's just a match that doesn't really, it's just poorly booked. Like, why would you book that match? I just don't understand. And let's be honest, y'all. You know, I talk about like the booking and this and that, and the behind the scenes and the talent roster and all that. Like, let's be honest, the most interesting stories to come out of AEW is the behind the scenes drama. The stuff that happens behind the scenes, and this is sad, but it's true, is more interesting and it overshadows the storylines. That was the biggest story coming out of All In. It wasn't just that MJF Adam Cole had a great match and that they had this huge, number of people and all that. It's the fact that CM Punk got into another fight. So, that's, again, I'm probably going to do another video about the Punk thing because there's more to talk about now. And there's more coming out. But it just goes to show that going into this show, the company was a mess. It's messy, and this stuff. Maybe now they can get refocused, but it's a mess right now. But again, the talent did the best they could, considering the parameters they were put under. There was a moment in the match where MJF was like selling his neck, and he has to take a breather. And I was watching it, and it's one of those things where, he could be working. I'm sure he is working, but I'm pretty sure his neck really is hurting. Maybe not as bad as he's saying, or maybe worse than he's saying. Because let's not forget, he did take a brain buster onto the steel steps. And even though the business is obviously, entertainment, that's still risky, because just a couple inches wrong and you could hurt yourself real bad. And maybe he kinked his neck on that. The neck and the back are the two body parts in wrestling, and the knees that seem to go out more often than anything else in any other body part. You know what I mean? And neck injuries are always the scariest ones, because they don't just heal up in a couple weeks. Like, that takes time sometimes. So there could be a chance that MJF really is in pain and is just trying to fight through it. Like the real, not just in kayfabe, I mean the real guy, MJF and Adam Cole win with the double clothesline. The move is over. Perfectly acceptable TV match. This could have been a Dynamite match or a Collision match, and it was fine. Obviously, this was nowhere near the level of MJF and Cole against FTR or something like that. I really thought they'd do the Kingdom match on this show. Maybe they're saving it for Wrestle Dream or whatever, the next pay-per-view in October. But fine for what it was. So, as Cole and MJF are going back up the ramp, Samoa Joe's music plays, and because he's going to defend the ROH TV title against Shane Taylor. Shane Taylor's a good worker, man. I'm glad he's getting this shot. And as that's happening, Joe's coming to the ring, and he pushes MJF. So that's the subtle tease for an MJF Samoa Joe AEW title program, which I would be fine with, and that's actually a pretty good program to put on Collision. Joe versus MJF. Although I do wonder if they're going to have some angles on the Ring of Honor show. This could be a strategy to get people to buy the Honor Club so they can watch the ROH show to see what the story is going to be between Joe and MJF. Not sure if it's going to work, but MJF and Joe, I like that, because Joe would be a logical challenger to MJF, even though he just lost the Punk a week ago. I think AEW is probably going to ignore the existence of Punk from now on. I don't expect them to, after what Khan said at the beginning of Collision last night, I'm not expecting them to even reference CM Punk anymore. I think, I hate to say it, but they're probably going to pretend like he was never there. It feels that way. They're going to probably just pretend like it was all just, no, it didn't happen. It's not canon. Kind of like how when Benoit, and I'm not comparing the two, but remember when Benoit did his thing, it was like he was never there. All storylines with him were dropped. All mentions of him were dropped. And I feel like this is going to be a similar situation where it'll be like how it was last September, where he won't even be mentioned, So I should mention, actually, before I get to the match, MJF did attack Samoa Joe. He attacked him. He ran into the ring and attacked him with his bad neck. So I don't know if they're setting up, I don't know if it's going to be a long-term feud or just a match and that's it, but it seems to be, that's where they're going. And I'm fine with that. Shane Taylor comes out, man, and gets no reaction. This goes back to what I was talking about before, man. This company far too often books for the internet, and even if you're an internet wrestling fan, you might not know who Shane Taylor is. Shane Taylor, even though he's a good worker, I like him a lot, he has not been on anything major since a couple of ROH pay-per-views, and people don't like to watch those. It's a niche of a niche of a niche. The people who watch them, let me take that back. It's not that they don't like watching them, but not enough people watch them. You understand what I'm saying? And so you have to do what you can. And going back to Booking 101, you got to get the audience familiar with your characters. And even though Shane Taylor's a good worker, and maybe this match was supposed to get him familiar with the people, that's why he got no reaction, because nobody knows who he is and nobody's seen his body of work yet. Even people who are hardcore, you have to be super duper niche hardcore to see his stuff. This match was, again, okay for a TV match, not really pay-per-view quality in my book. Maybe AEW should have less matches like what WWE did with Payback, and have them mean a little bit more. But it wasn't bad. I mean, they had a slugfest. Samoa Joe won with the choke. It wasn't bad by any means. It's just that, especially for All Out, think about All Out 2021, how they had such phenomenal, work on that show. But again, not bad. I'm not overly criticizing it. It's just this match would have been better as a Dynamite match than as an All Out match. Then we had Luchasaurus defend the TNT Championship against Darby Allin. I say it every time I see him, but I do worry legit if Darby Allin's going to end up in a wheelchair, because this guy just, it really feels, it's funny because it really feels like he has no care in the world when he does some of the stuff he does, man. He just takes some punishment here. But you know what this match did have going for it is that it was one of the few matches on this show that actually had like a build-up. Like, this match was a feud that was going on between these two. And so at least there's that. It's the typical David versus Goliath story where Luchasaurus just throwing Darby around and Darby's doing everything he can to fight. Darby's actually pretty good. I would say very good at doing that. Like, he might not be Shawn Michaels, but he's pretty good at being the underdog. I mean, he almost always is because of how small he is. But with somebody like Luchasaurus, even more so. I like the finish a lot. Darby gets caught in the tombstone position from Luchasaurus. He hits him with 2 tombstones, and I'm like, he better not kick out. And then flipped it into a snake eyes and then a lariat for the 3 count. So Luchasaurus retains, and I like the finish a lot because, man, if you hit 2 tombstones and kick out, dude, like, we've seen that in AEW, guys getting hit with tombstone pile drivers and they kick out. That move's got to be protected, yo. Like, they got to protect something. So at least here it was the 3 count. After the match, Christian was about to hit Darby with the concerto, but then a bunch of baby faces who we rarely see ran out from the back and ran them off. So Darby's not going to be permanently injured here. But, man, dude's nuts. Powerhouse Hobbs versus Miro was next, and this is another match that was signed before All Out because Hobbs decided to just challenge Miro. There's not really like a long-term story here. And again, that goes back to AEW's lack of creativity. Same thing with Ruby Soho, Chris Statlander. I want to challenge you to a match this Friday on Rampage on TNT, or I challenge you to a match at All Out. That's not really a story if there's no reason for it. I'm not saying that every single angle on the show or every single match on the show needs an angle like the Bloodline. I'm not saying that, but AEW relies way too much on the random challenges versus there being an actual reason as to why these guys are fighting. They're 2 big, meaty, muscular guys going at it, so the booking of having those guys fight isn't necessarily bad, but what's the story here? This match was freaking phenomenal. Look, AEW is not really known for having really good big man matches, right? That's more of a WWE thing. This match right here fits anywhere in like Madison Square Garden in the 70s. Like, it would be like that, except that these guys went out there and, dude, they killed it. This is about as good as you're going to get from these guys. Powerhouse Hobbs is such a great talent. He has so much potential. And Miro, I mean, I've been a fan of his since he came to AEW, and his character and everything about him. They went in there, had a strong lockup. They're throwing each other around with big suplexes, and the way they're bumping is big. And I know some folks might criticize it and say they were over bumping. I don't think so. I think these guys want to go out there and prove that just because they're big does not mean they can't have a great match. Just because the Young Bucks are known to steal the show at All Out, and people who are middle-sized guys like FTR and even CM Punk, guys like that. These guys went out there and just completely had a phenomenal match, dude. And I knew it was going to be okay, but I did not think it was going to be this good. Miro wins the match, and after the match, Hobbs offers a handshake, and Miro gives it to him. Once he turns around, Hobbs attacked him. And this led to the AEW debut of Lana, CJ Perry, as they call her outside of WWE. Damn, man. She's been teased and coming in for like years, man. Years. He would mention her very subtly in promos. She did debut here to, I guess, distract Hobbs while Miro made his comeback to, protect her and whatever and get revenge for himself. But this feud is not over yet based on this finish. Also, so Miro's staring at her and she's looking at him, and that's his wife, of course. And then he just leaves the ring. So I don't know if the story, not obviously real life, but in the story, he didn't know she was going to be there, or he didn't want her to be there to protect her. I don't know, but they're trying to build some intrigue for the coming weeks with her debut in AEW. We then had Kris Statlander versus Ruby Soho, another I challenge you to a match feuds that has no real story. Like I said, you can do that for a few of the undercard matches, but AEW's big problem has always been their lack of stories and their lack of telling the stories right. You can do it again for one or two matches, but I feel like it's an ongoing thing in this company that needs to be rectified. Anyways, again, the work is going to save the show. They tried, and the match was fine for what it was. I know I say that a lot on this show, but it was fine for what it was. Only women's match on this show that, they already had the women's title match at All In, so they figured they'd do the TBS title here. It looks like Toni Storm has turned on her own friends here, so I'm guessing that means she's a babyface now. They're building up a Toni Storm versus Saraya match, it seems like, just starting here, so yeah, that's what happened. And Kris Statlander won, retained the title, finally got a win over Ruby, whom had wins over her in the past. We then had Ricky Starks versus the American Dragon Bryan Danielson, who returned last night on Collision. Remember, this was supposed to headline the show. It was supposed to be CM Punk versus Ricky Starks for the quote-unquote real world title, but CM Punk is gone, so they had to rush to figure out what they were going to do. I had heard Adam Page would be in this match, but Adam Page he won the Battle Royal on the pre-show. I didn't get to see the pre-show, but I heard that's what happened. And so here we are with Bryan Danielson versus Ricky Starks. This whole thing started because of CM Punk having a match with Ricky Starks on the Owen Hart tournament. So there was a feud going into this, and Starks had cheated to win. And then Ricky Steamboat had come out to referee a match between the two, and then Steamboat got beat up. And I guess, it was supposed to be Punk getting revenge for Steamboat because they had their thing in 2004 Ring of Honor, but now it's going to be the other Dragon getting revenge. Bryan Danielson came out to Final Countdown again, which made me very happy. I thought that was only going to be a one-time thing for Forbidden Door 2, but no, he came out to Final Countdown, made me happy. Ricky Steamboat did do commentary for this. It was a strap match. Before the match started, Ricky Starks did not put the strap on, and instead ran to the outside and started brawling with Danielson, and he hit him with the weight belt in the face to get cheap heat. And it worked. It actually worked. Bryan did a nasty-looking blade job here, so he's already coming in as the underdog. This was a good move to get heat on Ricky Starks. This match told a great story, and it really is my favorite style of wrestling. Bryan Danielson's been my favorite for I don't know how long, and this is just classic storytelling. Ricky Starks constantly being, the dirty player, the heel, babyface versus heel dynamic. That's my favorite style. And I loved how, there was a part in the match where Ricky gets put on the top rope and Bryan just wears him out with the strap, man. It was so loud, the whole building heard it and reacted to it. And because you're on the top rope, everyone gets to hear the full vibration of it. That was just great, great stuff. I mean, there's very few bad Bryan Danielson matches, man. It's tough to find them. And I knew this wasn't going to be bad the minute it was signed. They did a spot where Big Bill came out and Ricky Steamboat at 70 blocked one of his punches and chomped him, and they got a pop. But then Steamboat was grabbed by the throat, then Starks landed on Big Bill. But it was wacky because I don't believe that 70-year-old Ricky Steamboat could actually hurt Big Bill because of how literally big Big Bill is. He's a huge monster. I mean, if he was a smaller guy, maybe. But it was still awesome to see him throw that chop one more time. So Bryan puts him in the label lock, and then he wraps the strap around his neck and pulls on it. Starks did a great job with his facials here. You can see he was in pain, and he slowly sort of, passed out. And he did not tap out. So That's kind of like a baby face thing, that he didn't tap out, that he survived until he passed out. But still, he was defeated. I guess Bryan is now a baby face, even though the remainder of the Blackpool Club is heels. Or maybe they're gonna have a feud. I don't know, but big victory for Bryan. Great match. Had a lot of fun watching it. Eddie Kingston and Katsuyori Shibata versus Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta from the Blackpool Combat Club was next. Eddie and Claudio have had a feud for that ROH title for a few months now. So this does have a backstory, even though I think they could have built up to this better. I think that they could have, kind of done a story where they get Shibata involved. They did it at the Ring of Honor show, I know that, but I mean on AEW television. That way the fans who don't get Honor Club can see it. But it really was, this show had a lot of ROH in it. So it really did feel like you had to follow ROH to kind of know what's really going on with some of these matches, this one in particular. The match was okay. The finish was a little bit anticlimactic. It was just like a European uppercut. Eddie goes down. Claudio covers him, and Eddie kicks out right after the 3 count. Maybe it was meant to be like that, but it was just one of those matches that I was kind of sitting here waiting for it to end. You know what I mean? Not that I dislike any of these guys. I actually love Shibata very much. But it's just a match on the card. That's all it is, It makes the show longer. So the next match was Kenny Omega against Konosuke Takeshita, aka Konosuke Takeshita, if you want to be like proper. And this match actually had a video package. That was fun to see because there is history here. They were friends. Takesh turned on him at Double or Nothing. I was there in the front, not the front row, but the front of I was on camera at the front of the upper right part of the risers. I was right there, but it was great. But they had that 6-man at All In, and now we have the one-on-one here at All Out, which I think this should have been on All In. If they can't do the Ospreay match, this should have been the match in front of the stadium because Kenny turns it up whenever he's inside of a stadium or a dome, and I would assume it would be no different at Wembley. Don Callis is such a great bad guy. He's got to be like tippy-top best talker in the company. Him or MJF, right? That's got to be it. Him, MJF, or Jericho. That's my top 3 talkers in AEW. Man, he is so good. He's always been good. I've been a fan of his since he was the Jackal all the way back in like 97 with Kurgan the Interrogator. And he's still just as good now, maybe even better than he was back then. These guys had a hellacious match. I mean, there were some moves in this match where, again, I'm thinking, damn, Kenny, man, your neck. You're going to be in pain later in life, yo. These guys, it really is a pick 'em. It's hard to pick whether this was better than Seth Rollins and Nakamura. Seth and Nakamura was longer and definitely felt longer, so this match was probably a bit better, I would say. Plus the surprising fact that Takeshita got another pinfall win over Kenny Omega. He won the match with basically a knee to the face, his own version of the V-trigger without the knee pad being in the way. The feud continues, so this is not over yet. And I'm glad it's not over yet because these guys have a lot of chemistry, tons of chemistry, and I want them to work together again because it was great. So it was at this point that I was able to start watching the show. And last 2 matches here, you had FTR, the Young Bucks, teaming up in an 8-man tag against the Bullet Club Gold, and which is basically the Gun Club, the Billy Gunn's kids, bro, and the Bullet Club Gold, which the members that actually work New Japan, which would be Juice Robinson and Switchblade Jay White. They went out there and they had a pretty fun little match. You're going to get a good mix of your FTR tag team style and your Young Bucks style. The crowd was a little bit hostile toward the Bucks. They weren't that hostile, but they were a little bit hostile. Probably because the word had got out that Kenny Omega wanted to work with CM Punk, and there are still going to be Punk fans in the crowd. It's just that they weren't that vocal. But the match did really feel like a Collision main event. Like, it really felt like this match belonged on Collision more than it did on this pay-per-view. And it was supposed to be, I guess, this idea of, FTR and the Bucks working together against a common enemy. That was the story here going into the show, but not enough time to really give it its proper build-up. With that being said, Blade Runner by Jay White and Colton Gunn got the pinfall. He got the pinfall on Wheeler, so the heels win. The feud will continue, I'm sure. Then the main event. AEW International title, Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy. So look, I'm not a fan of either of these two guys as much as I am other guys on the roster. Orange Cassidy's gimmick is, to me, very played out. That promo he cut on Wednesday's Dynamite was really good, and he needs to be taking these matches more seriously. The story with Orange Cassidy is, as he evolves as a worker, he needs to become a bit more, more serious. The whole little leg goofy thing and the pockets thing, to me, he's got to evolve beyond that because the competition's getting more and more serious. That's why one thing I liked about this match is that Moxley actually attacked him at the very beginning when he tried that crap. He straight up just went in and started hitting him in the middle of it. And that's exactly what would make sense. In a real fight, if some dude's goofing off like that, you're about to fight him, yeah, you're going to hit him. That was good. When it comes to Moxley, I feel like he's incredibly overrated, I think, by a lot of people. All his matches are pretty much the same. And the blood thing, it's just, to me, he's a great promo, great talker. He's just not the worker that people thought I don't think he's that good. Now, that being said, these guys did have a chemistry in this match, and they told a story, so I'm going to give them props. This was a good match. They told a great story because the story was that Orange Cassidy got busted open early in the match. Moxley was beating on him, with the story being that Orange Cassidy had been, he'd been defending his title so much that he was getting more and more injured and more worn out, and Mox was there to kind of pick up the bones. And of course, Mox being a former champion, he's going to ragdoll Orange Cassidy and throw him around, and the story was, how much can Cassidy take? How much can he really take? They teased the orange punch for a while. They missed it, and he finally hit it. There was a moment where he went for it, and Mox jabbed him. Mox went to the outside and ripped open the mats on the outside of the ring to do a move on Orange Cassidy, but he reversed it. Cassidy was trying to survive, basically, and he did the best that he could. He hit some orange punches, but Mox just kept bullying him. And the match ended. This actually told a really good story. Cassidy's still bleeding. He's losing plasma, as they say. And he basically kept getting up, defiant, very defiant towards Moxley. And then Moxley hit him with the Death Rider and the big one where he lifts you up, and he won the title. So the Blackpool Combat Club won, and then the whole crowd, they did the whole thing where they were waiting for the crowd to give Cassidy a standing ovation, with the slow pan up, and that's the story they told here. So no AEW World Title match on this show. Like I said, Punk was supposed to defend his title, but that didn't happen. You know why. There'll be a lot more to talk about as the story starts to come out this week about what really happened. There's more than just Punk versus Perry. I guess Punk actually almost assaulted Tony Khan, and we'll get more on that coming out this week. Allegedly, we'll see. Anyways, solid pay-per-view. A lot of it did feel, to be honest, though, imagine if you took one Dynamite and one Collision. You had 4 hours of wrestling combined into one show. That's what this felt like. It didn't feel like a pay-per-view. It felt more like 2 episodes of AEW's weekly TV put together into one show. That's the best I can say. So this All In, All Out thing, not a good idea. They really need to spread these out. That's my review. Take care, y'all. Have a good one. I'll talk to y'all this week.